Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at if statements. If statements allow us to perform certain actions based on whether or not a condition exists. And usually that condition is whether or not something is true or something is false. In order to get started, we need to do some housework first and make sure everybody's familiar with a couple things. First is relational operators. We've seen these in algebra before, so you should be familiar with most of these, if not all of them. We'll be taking a look or be using the less than operator, the greater than symbol, the less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Now let's talk about how we write equal to. So if we want to check if two things are equal, we use a double equal sign. In Java, in most programming languages, a single equals dictates or denotes a assignment statement. So we want to take a value and set it equal to, or take a variable and set it equal to some value. We do that with a single equals sign. We've been using that since day one. If we write int num equals 5, that's an assignment statement with a single assignment operator, which is the equal sign. If we want to check to see if two things are equal, so compare them, we do double equals. You'll forget this sometimes, and it's okay, and we'll fix it. But if we want to compare them, we got double equals instead of single. Not equal, we're going to do a exclamation mark and an equal sign. And this is true for several different programming languages, so these are really good to know. These are pretty standard. So this Python, these look exactly the same. So relational operators. Now let's look a little bit deeper at the equals comparison operator and how this works with different data types. And I'm going to pop into Eclipse here. This is the same code that's on the notes page, and so I just want you to see it. I like looking at it in Eclipse. So up here we have some primitive data types. We've got num equals 5, ch equals a, and a boolean, which is set to true. And we'll start seeing more and more booleans in this chapter, so we need to get familiar with how those work. Booleans are a primitive data type that can only be true or false. Okay, here, let's look at this print statement. This print statement says num equals 5. And so this is going to print out either true or false based on if num is equal to 5. And of course here num is 5, so that's going to print true. The next one says, this is just an example of how we would compare a char. We would say ch, is ch not equal to a? That's going to print a false because ch is a. And so ch not being a, that's not true. Ch is a. Okay, and a boolean, booleans, if we just print them out, we can just throw a boolean in there and that will print true because bool is true. Now we could also write bool equals true, and that would accomplish the same task. It would check to see if bool is equal to true. But in Java, we can just throw in the boolean by itself and it'll print its state or its condition state as true or false. So with primitives, this simply checks the value that's contained inside the variable. It's going to compare what's inside num to 5. This is going to compare what's stored, the value stored in ch with the a. And then it's going to see if they're the same, and it's going to print out whether true or false if they're the same. Okay. Just to go a little deeper, this is actually comparing the ASCII value of that char. So it's going to see is the a stored in there, what's its ASCII value, and then it's going to see the ASCII value of this and compare those two. So if you remember ASCII values in that big chart we looked at a while back, but anyway, it compares their values at face value, like what are they, like you think they would. Now object data types work a little bit different. Object data types compare the actual object or the memory location of the object. So for instance, we've got 3 turtles here. We've got Yertle, and whenever I do this line here, it's going to create Yertle. So this new keyword says, hey, I want to make a turtle, and I want to store it's going to create it. It's going to get its memory location. It's going to throw that memory location inside of Yertle. So Yertle will reference the memory location of where that turtle was created. Okay, we talked about this before. Line 15, same thing's going to happen with Wordle. I'll make a brand new turtle. It's going to send back the memory location, and that's going to get stored inside that variable called Wordle. Next, I have turtle Myrtle equals Yertle. What this does is it creates a turtle variable called Myrtle. Remember, that side is not creating a turtle. It's simply a turtle data type called Myrtle. It's a variable that can hold a turtle. Okay. This side does not contain the new keyword. So we're not creating a new turtle here. It's simply referencing Yertle. And so what really happens is there becomes a connection. So in memory, we have Yertle here somewhere in memory. And then what happens is we create a connection between Yertle and Myrtle. Myrtle ends up referencing the Yertle object, or wherever it is in memory. It's going to get its memory location. So what happens is there are only two turtles that are ever created. Myrtle ends up pointing to the exact same turtle that Yertle is pointed to. Okay, so let's check that out, how that would work out if we compared them. Okay, if I'm checking to see if Wordle is equal to Yertle, that's obviously false because Wordle and Yertle were two different turtles that were created in memory. Okay, we got the new keyword. They both made two new turtles. They're two totally different turtles, have two totally different variable names, so that's obviously false. Now, if I do Myrtle equals Yertle, technically here it's comparing the exact same object to itself because both Myrtle and Yertle are pointed to, that's so funny, are pointed to the exact same turtle object that was created in memory. This object, wherever it is, they both are getting that exact same object's memory location. And so that one prints true, that they are the same. So just to recap, primitive data types, those compare the face value. Is num of 5, is ch and a, okay, is bool true. Object data types, this includes strings, so keep that in mind. This strings are data or objects, so it includes strings. Object data types compare also the value that's in the variable, but remember that the value that's in the variable is the memory location. And so yeah, just keep that in mind, that that's the value that's in there and that's what it's going to compare. So yeah, and moving on. The syntax of an it's, now that we know, how these relational operators, how they look, and then we know how equals works and how equality works with different data types, the basic syntax of an if statement, and if you've done any kind of coding anytime in the past, if you've done any kind of block coding, whatever, this is not going to be something brand new to you, but some people it is, so we'll take this rather slowly. This is the basic syntax of an if statement. We put if, and then we have a parentheses, and inside the parentheses, we're going to throw a Boolean expression. Here's what that means. Inside the parentheses has to be a Boolean. It can be a Boolean variable that has true or false in it, or it can be a comparison that results in a true or false. Whatever it is, it needs to result in a true or a false. That way that if statement can check it, and if that if statement checks it and it's true, it will run whatever is below it, whatever code is next. Do notice that the if statement header is not a statement. There's no semicolon there. But whatever comes after it should be some kind of a statement and will end in a semicolon. So if you get into this and you realize you're running into more errors than normal, double check and make sure that you haven't accidentally put a semicolon on this line. That happens quite a lot. So check that first and make sure you haven't done that. Okay, some basic usage, and I'm going to pop again in Eclipse. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, I'm attaching this code here for you to download. You can either copy and paste this into Eclipse, or you can download the file here and throw it in Eclipse to have a really good example. Okay, so on the top of this one, we've got four four data types here, or four variables. We've got sales, which is equal to 5,000, bonus with no value right now. Notice that string or position is a string, which is equal to cook. So we're talking about like somebody at a job, what's their title and whatnot. And then, this doesn't really make much sense. This code is just for me to give you several examples of how if statements work. We could say, hey, are they fired? So are they a current employee or not? So this person is an employee. They are not fired, so it's false. Okay, so let's take a look at how this would look with these different data types. So here we have if sales equals 5,000. That's going to check sales, see if it's equal to 5,000. Now what I want you to take note of is that statement or that comparison is going to return a Boolean, a true or a false. It's either true or it's not. And it's going to plug that in. So sales is 5,000. So what really happens is true gets plugged in there. And when true gets plugged in there, it executes this code, target met, which is why this is printing. Okay, so do take note of that. It's literally going to plug in there a Boolean. Next, if position dot equals manager. So position was a string. Remember, it's cook up here. And we're going to check to see if it's equal to manager. I want you to notice we're not using equals equals. We're going to get further into why that is later on. But do notice that it's not using equals equals because I don't want to compare the memory locations of these. Strings are an object and equals equals compares memory locations. I don't want to do that. I want to compare the actual content. And the dot equals method allows me to check the actual contents of the string position to the actual contents of this string. And that's going to be more appropriate. Now, will equals equals work? Yes, and we'll get into why that will work in this case, but it's not good form to use it. We're going to use dot equals because that checks the literal contents of the string. Okay, next, if fired. Notice that I didn't put if fired equals true. I could put that and it'll work just fine, but that fired is a Boolean. And so what really gets plugged in there is its value, false. And so since that's false, this doesn't get executed. It doesn't print that. Okay, this is probably a good time to point out that every single one of these if statements gets triggered or gets checked. If I write it one after the other, just like this, Java is going to check that if, then it's going to check this if, then it's going to check this if, and subsequently, if either any of them is true, it'll do whatever is inside of them or whatever's connected to them. Okay, so keep that in mind. Lastly, you'll notice that these don't have any curly brackets, but this one down here does. You can put curly brackets on these and it doesn't affect it at all. Java doesn't care, but you don't have to. And the reason that is because these are only followed by a single line or a single statement. If I have what's called a block statement, which is more than one statement, I do have to include them within a curly brackets so that the if statement knows, or Java knows, that this entire thing is connected to the if. All of that should happen if the if statement is true. So this says if sales is greater than 5,000, and of course it's not, it's equal to 5,000. This is going to plug in a false here. And of course this isn't going to trigger. Okay,